All right, let's talk about civil war. Not the Civil War, but let's talk about civil war. I keep getting emails from people saying, are we headed for civil war, David? And it's asked as if it's a yes or no question. Like the Civil War will be starting on, May 22nd. What if we are asking the wrong question on this Civil War issue? Because in a lot of places, if we look historically around the world, civil wars didn't start with uniforms and declarations. They started with denial. They started with little things that people thought were isolated until it became too late. I'll give you some examples. In Yugoslavia, it started with politicians demonizing ethnic groups on TV. That was really the start of a civil war. We then got local militias, more organized disinformation, random violence that seemed like it came out of nowhere. And by the time people realized what was going on, cities were on fire and neighbors were killing each other. So it was a slow start. In Rwanda, which I've read about probably the most of any of the examples I'll talk about today, it started with radio hosts calling people cockroaches on the basis of their perceived or believed ethnic background. It didn't feel like war. It kind of was like, oh, it's talk radio. But then came the lists and the mobs, and then came the genocide. In Chile, in the 70s, it was rumor and paranoia that started it. They're planning a coup. They're destroying the country. The military stepped in to restore order, and then tens of thousands of people were disappeared. And so in the United States, it's unlikely that a civil war would look like 1861. It already doesn't, first of all. It looks like death threats to school boards and judges being stalked, election workers fleeing their jobs, and federal workers being laid off, and state legislatures threatening cities with policies that they don't like, presidents talking about suspending the Constitution, habeas corpus, etc. So this wouldn't be a hot war. We would be talking about a soft or cold civil war. Probably no marching bands, although Trump's birthday parade, is promising a lot. Maybe there will be marching bands there. No formal battlefield. It would be chaos and political violence and institutional collapse, one headline at a time. This goes back to the story we started with about how this is not supposed to feel normal. And unfortunately, this civil war may feel very normal. One side replacing school boards and banning books and rewriting laws to stay in power, and the other side saying, don't overreact. But a lot of times that's how it starts. It starts soft. And by the time people admit that it's happening, it's already here. So we have to, obviously, on the one hand, hope it's temporary, believe the fever will break and that reason will return. But look at everything we went through in the last 10 years, and Trump's back in power. So this is why I started the show talking about hyper-normalization. When things get so absurd and surreal that it all starts to feel normal, that's how people stop resisting, and that's how democracies die without a single shot fired. I'm steeped in this stuff every day, but I'm feeling the authoritarian slide. And I'm also feeling and sensitive to the temptation to tune it out. So the important thing here is, if people really do stop paying attention, then not only might we not notice the start of the soft civil war, it might be lost before we even realize that it's going on. Those are my thoughts on the Civil War thing. I don't expect declarations of war. I don't even necessarily think that such a civil war would be violent in the streets the way many people are thinking. But that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be taking place. Many in the audience know my first language is Spanish. I learned English later when I moved to the United States. And these days I do a fair amount of traveling, and I always make an effort to learn some of the new language before I get to the country. I've tried a bunch of methods for this. I keep coming back to the app Babbel, because with Babbel, you really can start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. Instead of paying hundreds of dollars for classes or fooling yourself with language apps that are basically just simple games, Babbel is designed by real people for real conversations. All of Babbel's tools are approachable. They are rooted in real life situations. They're delivered with conversation-based teaching. You might have seen on my Instagram, I was recently in France. Babbel got me ready last minute. I got to France. I was ready to order food, ask for directions, talk to people at stores and hotels without having to use my phone to translate. There are studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others that continue to prove that Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is like a semester of that language at college. With over 10 million subscriptions sold, Babbel is real language learning for real conversations. Here's a special limited time deal for my audience. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for my audience at babbel.com/Pacman. Rules and restrictions may apply. The link is in the description.